Welcome, Jill.
Thank you.
Yay.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
fellow Toastmasters. My name's Jill, and I will be speaking today about Harriet Eddy.
Oh, what?
Harriet Eddy. According to LA County Librarian John D. Henderson, there are no doubt many untold stories of California's first county libraries and county librarians that would have a place in the state's history if they could be told. Harriet Gertrude Eddy is one of these untold stories, even though she founded 40 out of 58 of California's county library systems, and she did not have a formal library education. She had direct founding influence. She was a founder of libraries in California, the Soviet Union, Bulgaria, Czechoslovakia, back when it existed, and Yugoslavia. She had indirect influence on several other states, Oregon, Hawaii, Texas, and Montana, and even Great Britain. So who was Harriet Eddy? She was born in 1876 in Lexington, Michigan, to a rather unusual family as they encouraged her to get a higher education. She got a bachelor's degree in classics from Albion College, and then she went on to the University of Chicago for postgraduate work. My sources differ here as to whether or not she actually got a master's degree, but after she left the University of Chicago, she went to Elk Grove, California, and started teaching at the high school. If you do a Google search on Harriet G. Eddy, you will find pages of information about the Harriet G. Eddy Middle School in Elk Grove, California, before you finally find information about Harriet Eddy herself. She became principal of the high school and set about getting her high school accredited so her students could go on to college. One of the things she needed for this accreditation was a really good library. Cue dramatic music, please. She improved her school's library by convincing the Sacramento County Library to go in with her and create a branch in her high school. This impressed the then state librarian James Gillis, who was trying to found more county libraries and had been unsuccessful up to that point. James Gillis did not have any background in librarianship. He was just a rich man who loved books and had enough political influence to get himself appointed as California's state librarian. At the time, California was mostly rural, and the municipal libraries did not have the resources to help people people supply.
Excuse me for a second, Joe, but we may want to wait for 5 minutes because it's quite a distraction with him taking the window.
I'm fine.
Are you?
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm almost done with this noise. I promise I just gotta get this out.
This is part of the Toastmaster Challenge.
In any case, California was mostly rural at this time, back in the early 20th century, and the municipal libraries did not have the resources to keep people supplied with educational and recreational reading materials. Gillis went on, a fact-finding mission back east to find out how they were handling rural areas, and many eastern states had traveling libraries, which couldn't actually travel. They were actually collections of books that were moved from place to place. And they had bookmobiles and book wagons, which were actually traveling libraries, but the name had already been taken, so they had to go with bookmobiles and book wagons. Gillis tried to implement a traveling library system called a Library Without Walls, but it failed. That's why he was so impressed at Harriet Eddy's success and why he recruited her. One of the reasons for his failure was that California is a big state. At the time, it was the second largest until Alaska was admitted and became third largest. It is 1,000 miles from north to south, about 350 miles west to east, and at the time, their roads were very poor. So Harriet Eddy set out to create county libraries, and she didn't work alone, of course. There was a lot of groundwork set by local organizers and librarians, such as Gold County's Bertha Coomley, Central California's Mabel Prentice, and Monterey County's Ann Haddon. Ann Haddon wrote the book that I got a lot of this information from. Credit also goes to the lawyer Edward Treadwell, who in 1911 drew up a law that actually helped get the funding for the county library system. It was Harriet Eddy, however, who got to bounce around California's poor roads, north to south, east to west, in wagons and motorized vehicles with poor, if any, suspension. According to a 1925 report to the American Library Association by Oregon State Librarian Harriet Long, of the 200 county libraries that existed in the United States at that time, 1/5 were in California. Compare Harriet and James's success with Indiana's attempts at founding county libraries. I pick on them not because they were bad, but because they were the first. In 1816, Indiana was the first state to implement any provisions for county libraries. 4 counties tried and failed to establish libraries, and Scott County finally managed to establish a library somewhere between 1846 and 1851. That's 1 library in 30 years. Harriet Eddy and James Gillis founded 40 library systems in 9 years. So why so little fame for this library founder? Part of it could be there is so little information about her, aside from her own writings, although there is corroboration from Ann Haddon and Harriet Long. Another thing could be political. As I mentioned before, she did go to the USSR at the invitation of the Commissar of Education, Anatol Lunacharsky, and at the time, and even now, communism was not very favored in the United States. Or it could just be she was overlooked because these things happen in history. In any case, I wanted to read about her, write about her, and talk about her because I think she deserves some recognition. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jim. Great job.